right. So our next guest listen to this, managed to pay off her $100,000 student loan debt, turn her credit score to around 800. That's nearly perfect. And now she's here to give you some advice about how we can do the same thing.
Yeah, Janet Alvarez is the personal finance expert at Wise Bread. Those are two things we could all use, some bread and some wisdom. How you doing, Janet?
Pretty well. How are you today?
Welcome.
So how'd you do it?
Yeah, we need to know the secret.
Well, I mean, first I should clarify. It was over $100,000 in debt, and it was medical debt and student loans.
Okay, so
Oof.
that combination,
Did you pay that medical debt?
both of which can really be daunting.
Exactly.
To knock that down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the student loans are a combination of federal and private. So a lot of the federal loans I put on income-based repayment, and those are still in repayment. It's just out of the way now in such a way that they can be managed. The private loans were paid off. Medical debt was paid off using some secrets that most people aren't aware of that are really actually easy.
Ooh, let's hear about these secrets then, Janet.
So few people realize that most major medical institutions, hospitals, physicians groups, offer debt forgiveness. And it's a simple application where you just sort of provide income documentation, pay stubs, family size, and they assess your income against your ability to pay, and they will forgive up to 100% of your debt.
That's
Wow.
amazing. Wow.
And this doesn't just apply for people who have no income. It also applies for many people in the middle class. Some hospitals here in the New York City area, for example, NYU Langone, will offer debt forgiveness even for a family of 3 earning $120,000 a year
So for
on a sliding scale.
So for those students who do not qualify for debt forgiveness, they just graduated.
Yeah, we're talking about student loans now then.
Yeah.
They just graduated. What advice would you give them about how to knock it down, how to attack this debt that they have now accumulated?
Well, do the first thing I did, which is get your plan on income-based repayment or pay as you earn or repay as you earn. These are all income-sensitive plans that tie your payments to how much you earn. So if you're earning nothing, your payments are zero. If you're earning very little, your payments are probably still zero, and then they graduate upwards. The reason that's important is because it protects you during times of unemployment or low earnings so that you're not having to pay this massive debt out of pocket. The second thing is when you are ready to start tackling the debt, you've got to take a good look not only at your budget, but at your earnings capacity. Often it's not enough to work one job. In my situation, I ended up working 2 jobs in order to repay some of the private debt much more quickly.
Because that had higher interest rates.
Yeah, that tends to have higher interest rates and also doesn't have protections, right? So if you lose your job, you're still on the hook for whatever you owe with private debt in most situations. It's not like the federal government where you can be on income-based repayment and your payments are zero if you lose your job. You're really on the hook with the federal debt. So I was in a rush to get that paid off, and I did. And then finally, don't forget that there are income forgiveness, income-based debt forgiveness programs for federal loans. So if you work in the public sector for 10 years or more, or if you work for an NGO or another nonprofit for 10 years or more, you do qualify for debt forgiveness. So
Yeah, but that's been kind of in
been
the
difficult to
news
get.
lately
Yeah,
because only 1% of people who are applying are getting forgiven right now.
Yeah, but hopefully the government is rectifying that situation in such a way that it'll be easier to qualify and easier to apply. And then the last thing I would say is never, ever, ever let your debt default. If you let your debt default, then that's when all hell breaks loose.
Oh yeah, that's
Pandora's
at that point it's ridiculous. And
hard
would
to
that be your same advice for medical debt as well?
Yeah, and so for medical debt, I think medical debt is one situation in which you have absolutely no reason to ever pay it off for a couple of reasons. One, you can get complete debt forgiveness in most cases. Second, even if you don't get complete debt forgiveness, that debt has 0% interest. Hospitals, doctors' offices are generally not going to charge you interest. Right. So I still have one small medical bill on which I pay $25 a month.
For how
and
long?
I don't mind paying it off over a few years.
You're not accruing any interest.
No interest. Yeah. Why am I going to rush to
Why
pay
did
that
you
off?
have medical debt? You didn't have good insurance?
Yeah, so the medical debt I incurred was shortly after I graduated from grad school.
And you didn't have insurance?
And I didn't have insurance because I didn't have a job. And that's a situation a lot of people found themselves
What
in
state
during the
were
Great
you in?
Recession. I was in Arizona.
Yeah, so in New York, they provide insurance when you're uninsured, but in places like Arizona, they do not.
Yeah, and I think it's particularly important for young people today to remember this because young people today who are now graduating college may not remember the Great Recession from 10 years ago. And the economic cycle is strong now, but it won't always be that way. We're almost certainly going to have another recession within a few years. We might find ourselves being unemployed again and might have to rely on these learnings from 10 years ago to recuperate our financial situation today.
So let's look at this from like a different perspective, right? For people who are just going into college now, right? do you feel like you should do everything you can not to incur the debt to begin
Of
with?
course, of course. I mean, I think it was the Obama administration that proposed tying the amount of debt that an institution can offer its students to the average earnings in the institution of a particular major. And I think that's true. The rule of thumb is to never take on more debt than you expect to earn your first year on the job.
Interesting. That's an easy one to remember. Okay.
And mathematically, it also works out if you kind of do the calculation. Well, how much interest does that work out to, and how long will it take me to pay off? So if you're in school to be a teacher and you expect your first year's salary to be $40,000 a year, don't take on more than $40,000 in debt. Second, consider the quality of the institution you're attending and their record with actually placing people in the types of jobs that you're looking for. So, I mean, I don't want to sound harsh, but sometimes we have to be honest with ourselves. Not everyone gets into Harvard, right? Some of us attend institutions that are a lot more modest in their reputation and in their ability to place people into jobs. Understand what kind of school you attend and what kind of record they have placing people into the jobs you want. If you're attending a school that does not have a great record placing people into the jobs you want, maybe you don't even want to take on 1 year's salary worth of debt, because that may not even be a good bet if you can't expect to get a job in your chosen profession easily.
So let's talk about some good news. So so the bad news is that there's $1.5 trillion worth of student debt out there, which is a staggering sum.
Outlandish.
The good news is that undergrad student loan rates are falling. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So undergrad student loan rates are falling for a few reasons. I think states have become more generous with financial aid and need packages in many instances, and also because since the Great Recession, people have become more sensitive to alternatives. Also, a lot of states simply have less funding to offer in some situations. Graduate student debt, on the other hand, has continued to rise because there aren't as many constraints.
And there aren't a lot of forgiveness programs because these are people who are high-income people. People don't realize that 40% of student loans are graduate loans. And these are doctors, lawyers, scientists. These are high-earning people. The government's not going to be chasing after them to forgive them.
But what about scholarships? Like, people are afraid to find scholarships and grants, and there's so many out there for so many types of students and people. I think they're intimidated to go through the process.
I think that there are two major failures of the federal government in its federal student aid programs. The first major failure is not automatically enrolling anybody with student loans in income-based programs, right? They will automatically enroll you in the standard repayment program, even though that may result in a higher payment on a monthly basis.
And higher default.
Higher default, fewer protections from unemployment. The government should automatically enroll you in an income-sensitive program, no matter what. And then you can choose to go into the standard program if you wish. The second big failing is that they don't make access to or knowledge about grants and scholarships as readily available as they do for student loans. So when you go to the FAFSA website, when you go to the federal student loan website, there's ample information about student loans. There's much less information about grant and scholarship availability. They would be doing us a wonderful service if they created a national database that provided students state by state with information about grants and scholarships, which they may be available.
Okay, so quickly, we're running out of time here. Wisebread published the book 10,001 Ways to Live Large on a Small Budget. So just give us the one.
Would you like to hear one of my favorites?
Yes.
One of my favorites is almost every major city in this country, New York is not the exception, of course, has like a cordon bleu school where chefs go to train to become 5-star chefs. And they will often do 5-course meals for something like $10 or $15. And the quality of the food is 5-star. So one of the tricks that I often employ when I want a 5-star meal on an absolute dime is to go to these cooking schools. San Francisco has a great one called Technique. Cordon Bleu here in New York and in upstate New York are phenomenal as well. And you're going to have a 5-course, 5-star meal for pennies on the dollar.
I'm going to do that.
I'm going to do that. Where is it here?
It's in here in Midtown Manhattan.
Well, I am going to go there, Janet.
Janet Alvarez, thank you so much.